Hey guys, Ben here. Welcome to the channel. I am going to start, today's the beginning of building my soil. Now, I don't have cows and sheep and 1,000 chickens to move around the farm. And that has never really been the plan with the farm. As you know, if you've followed my channel, that I'm calling this the farm because it will become the eventual homestead, but it gets confusing when you say homestead A and homestead B. My plan has never been to have cattle and sheep and all that kind of stuff here on the property, but I do still need to build the soil because I plan on having gardens and possibly orchards and, other things like that. And also, I kind of like having things look kind of nice. And in order to do that, if you want to grow nice green things, even if it is a nice lawn or whatever, you kind of need good soil to do it. And today is going to be the first step of what may end up being about a 4-year plan. Let me show you what I'm talking about. All right, so here it is. That's right, rye grain. I'm not here to grow fields of wheat or rye, but cereal rye is actually a very good soil builder. I'm by the road if you haven't noticed. I tell you what, let me get things unhitched here and maybe we'll go to the back of the property where it's a little more quiet. So we are at the top of the 3 acres. Here, let me put you in a better spot. I just want to show you a little bit about what's going on here. So as you can see behind me, it's kind of patchy. There's some parts that are mowed back here. There's some parts that are not mowed right here. And I just couldn't finish last time I was here, but really today the main focus that I have is I'm going to work on the areas that are already mowed and see if I can put down this rye grain. Now, like I mentioned before, the cereal rye, I'm not growing it necessarily for the grain. What I am growing it for is the carbon. I want you to think about this for a second. If you have 1 bale of straw, I'm talking about, let's say, wheat straw. If you have 1 bale of straw, that bale might cost you, at least in my area, somewhere in the ballpark of $8 or $9. That 1 bale might cover maybe a few hundred square feet, right? So in order to cover enough straw over a field that you're seeding with a decent enough cover for it to be effective, you're going to need a lot of bales of straw. It could cost in the many hundreds of dollars to do that. Possibly the thousands of dollars if you start talking about multiple acres now that you have to try to get some cover on. On the contrary, I was able to find a local farmer where I could buy this rye grain from, and it was very affordable. It was less than $30 to get 1 bag, a 50-pound bag, and actually it was really more like $20. I don't remember the exact price, but it was somewhere in the ballpark of about 20 bucks. So you figure if I put down about 100 pounds an acre, I'm only looking at about $40 an acre to put this down, which means I get a whole acre of straw that I'm going to be able to cut and lay down in the summer for 40 bucks. That's pretty good. Now the key is going to be to getting this stuff to germinate, getting it to tiller, meaning to grow multiple little leaves, grass blades, and then letting it overwinter so that I can get some nice tall growth in the spring. All of that is going to depend on really meticulous timing, which I'm hoping is right now, because we have a good 2 or 3 days of expected rain, precipitation coming in, which is going to be exactly what I need to get the seed covered and get the seed germinating. So wish me luck. I'm gonna get started. I'll see you guys in a little bit. The first thing I'm going to do is grab my poor man's drag harrow and see if I can just scratch up the ground just a little bit. This ground is pretty hard. It's been baking all summer, and I just don't know if it's soft enough to accept any seed, especially if I'm going to be broadcasting. Once the ground is scratched up, I'll go ahead and spread that seed down and then use the lawn roller to do my best to get a little bit of seed to soil contact. Most of that seed to soil contact is really going to come from the rain. Each drop that hits the ground is like that water punching the ground and loosening that soil and causing it to splash. And that splashing is moving the soil and covering those seeds with just enough soil to trigger that seed to germinate. All of this relies on very meticulous timing, and I hope I got it right. Scratching the ground up with a pallet, I've mentioned this before, it does work. It's just really slow going on this particular property because there's so much trash on this property because it was just newly cleared. Here you can see all of this has kind of been scratched up, and it's pretty loose, and it's exactly what I need. And over here, this is some tougher soil that's kind of been loosened up a little bit, and the rain will do the rest of the work. It's even kicked up a few rocks here. Let's get rid of that guy. But you can see all over here, that's kind of how this looks. It is doing the job, but I have to go so slow because if I catch something like this that's still stuck in the ground, it breaks the rope, it snags, it just causes a lot of problems. It's also not very even. You might be able to tell here, you can see where there are lines where there's definitely parts that got scraped and parts that did not. Entire areas that were left untouched. So is it as good as, you know, bringing an actual harrow out here? Probably not. But also, I'd be a little hesitant to bring an actual harrow out here because I feel like the tines would probably get stuck in all of these stumps, and then you're breaking real equipment. This one is free. If this thing just turns to dust because I drag it all over here and it breaks apart, it literally costs me nothing. If I pull some, you know, $200, $300, $600 harrow through here and I break it, we're talking real money then. All right, I'm gonna get to it. There's not a whole lot of time in the day. I kind of came here on a half day and I've got a lot of acreage to cover. So I'll see you guys in a little bit, and then maybe we'll chat at the end. All right, so this is that sandy shelf that I've talked about in the past in some previous videos, and I'm actually not going to seed this area because it turns out that that area is going to be around, if I can hold the camera, that area is going to be around the spot where the driveway is going to intersect with it, and then just above that's going to be like the house and the garage, and there's going to be driveway cut in through here, through this little area here, just in front of all of this sandy shelf. So there's no value in me seeding it because Let's Dig is literally going to come in here and cut this whole thing out probably in the next few weeks or so. So I'm going to focus all of my seeding in front of this shelf and towards the road, which is right behind you. I went ahead and put the mower right where this sandy shelf is. Again, the house is going to be somewhere around here. You might be able to see some flags. The garage is going to be somewhere around here inside of that tall grass. And so I'm going to seed in front of that sandy shelf, but not too close. I have some flags that are marking where the actual driveway is going to cut up. Again, I'm trying to put seed where it counts. So all of this is going to be green space, and that's where I'm going to focus a lot of my seed. I'm also going to focus just next to the garage. There's a little bit of green space here that is going to be unused, and all along the side here, which should be all green space. Okay, now with that out of the way, I'm gonna finish this up. Again, I'll see you guys in just a little bit. Okay, whew, it's been a minute. It's amazing how much work you can do when you're seeding, how long it takes, and how little results you see when you're done, because you're just putting tiny little seeds in the ground. Anyways, this is what we got. I realize it doesn't look like much, but the weeds are cut down, the saplings are cut down, the flags are in, and we got seed ready to germinate and overwinter. Okay, let me get some AC going here. Whew. Toasty. All right, hopefully you guys can still hear me. But yes, I am done. So I just want to talk briefly with you before I get back on the road and head back to the homestead. Why cereal rye? I mentioned already earlier that what I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to grow something green, get some exudates in the ground so that I can start building some soil, building the biology back again, because remember, everything's been cleared, right? So that's the first thing. But I could do that with anything. I could just seed more fescue, right? Well, I only seeded fescue because I just needed something to germinate quickly and to hold. So I used a mix of millet and fescue when I seeded the first time, because it was already too late to put down a warm season seed. And to be perfectly honest, I didn't want to put a warm season seed because that seed is expensive and the ground is not ready. You see, right now there's roots and stumps and just stuff that got missed, and there's rocks everywhere. It is not a prepared field to be putting down, multi-$1,000 bags of seed. So I need to put down just something, anything that was going to hold the soil. So I did a mix of annual and perennial. So I did a mix of temporary and permanent root structure. The fescue being a permanent root structure and the millet being a temporary root structure. The millet germinated quickly, which leads me to the rye. The millet is cut, it's gone. But now there's plenty of empty spots. There's a lot of ragweed, and there's all kinds of just trash grasses that are growing in there, and the fescue isn't strong enough to compete with all of those. Perennial grasses tend to be a little slower, longer to establish. And what I mean by that is it could take 2 or 3 years before a perennial turf grass is deeply rooted, healthy, and ready to fight back. I cannot leave the soil bare for 3 years. It will erode, it will turn to rock, it will just die. All the bacteria, everything that is in the soil will die. So I need to keep feeding the bacteria, I need to keep feeding the biology. The best way to do that is through exudates. Exudates being the sugars that plants feed into the soil to feed the microbes and everything else. Okay, cereal rye creates a dense root mat. It germinates relatively quickly, and it's an aggressive grower that overwinters. So it's going to give me some cover through the winter, and then into the spring, it's going to start sprouting and getting taller and, going to seed and that kind of stuff. But in the meantime, I'm hoping to get a pretty decent carpet of green out there and getting that root mat established. Now, once I cut this cereal rye, that will become my straw that will lay down on top of whatever the next seed happens to be. I could put down another crop of annual, maybe like a rye. Heck, I could even leave the rye that comes up, let it go to seed, let it dry out, and then I'll just come in here and mow it down, and that effectively is going to reseed for the next winter. And I could continue to do this until it gets dense and the topsoil gets thicker and thicker. I'm taking this 1 year at a time, but what I mentioned earlier is the most important part. I'm trying to establish a root mat because I'm chopping this stuff, and if I cut it, that root mat stays in the soil, and eventually it rots, it gets eaten by microbes, by bugs, whatever's in the soil, and that just turns into compost. So I'm effectively composting acres and acres of land, which would be just too expensive to try to actually buy compost and spread it over this many acres. So this is an effective and affordable way for me to spread carbon over many, many acres. Once I mow everything down, the fescue will remain and the rye will become mulch, i.e. carbon, to feed the soil, to feed the microbes, which in turn feed the grass. And lastly, I'm doing all of this purely to build the soil up, so I don't even know if fescue is going to be my final turf. I've never in my life grown a cool season grass. I've always grown warm season, St. Augustine when I lived down south, and ever since I've lived here in North Carolina, it's been centipede, 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 and I love it. I love centipede. I may even seed the farm with centipede. It's just not ready right now. And fescue really is the best option for dry farming. There's no irrigation out here. There's nothing. It's the most drought tolerant and one of the toughest cool season grasses that you can use for a sort of, I wouldn't call it a pasture, but for just open field environment. Anyways, I think I'm going to leave it here. I hope that explains why I'm putting the cereal rye down, because it's a good way of building biomass. It is one of the most effective biomass generators out there. It's a really aggressive plant once you get into the spring, and it's just a good way for me to put a lot of carbon down on the ground, which is what I need right now, is as much carbon as I can get. So hopefully that explains everything. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them down below. And as always, you guys be good. I'll see you on the next.